Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Thursday, September 8th, 2022. Dee, will you do the roll call?
Marlene Newton.
He's here.
Here. Doug Bruce. Daniel Schlegel.
Here.
Did anybody say anything?
Yeah, Daniel said he's here.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear him. Sam DeSaller.
Here.
Matthew Seddon.
I'm here too.
John Saunders.
Right next to Matthew. We're here.
All right. Elizabeth Mitchell.
I'm here too, right next to Matthew.
Place to be.
Allison Chopra. Bernard Cross.
Here.
Duncan Campbell. Derek Ritchie. Ernesto Castaneda.
Here.
Chris Turbaum.
Here. Thank you, Dee. So let's move on to approval of the minutes for August 25th, 2022. I need a motion.
Move to approve?
Second.
Excellent. Dee?
Marlene Newman.
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel.
Yes.
Sam DeSaller.
Yes.
Matthew Seddon.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell.
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Dee. All right, so let's move on to Certificate of Appropriateness, Commission Review, COA 22-70.
Wait, this is not the correct presentation. Sorry about
Sorry,
that.
Gloria.
This is not the correct presentation. Let me see where the correct presentation is. I'm sorry, give me 1 second because I just had a hiccup. Not proud about it. I should have looked at the... Okay. Okay. Let me... Okay. Here we go. Okay, let me close this. You just opened the wrong one. Let me do a new share. Thank you for your patience.
Excellent.
Here we go. Okay. COA 22-70 at 1006 East Atwater Avenue. The owners and petitioners, Ann and Doug Finley, are requesting for a fence to be built between their house and 1002 East Atwater. It's technically a fence divided in two, or two fences. A backyard 8-foot privacy fence starting at the front of the house towards the back, and then a 4-foot front yard fence that connects the 8-foot fence with a hedge in order to provide some privacy between both buildings. The owners are here. They can attest to it and talk about it more if they want to, but they have security concerns with the neighboring property and are requesting the fence so that they can avoid future incidents such as the one that happened earlier this year where somebody drove into their yard and destroyed part of their property. They weren't here to do anything. They have just returned to Bloomington after being on the other side of planet Earth and are trying to solve this issue as soon as possible. This is a photo. That's the neighboring building that you can see on this photo and their yard. The partially gone fence marks where they would be installing the new one. And this is the front yard. This is a view where the fence would be located. And here is a rendering of the same sort of that same location. And yeah, so staff recommends approval of COA 22-70.
And those are bushes beyond the fence?
Yes,
That is.
yes, it's, give me 1 second, let me backtrack a little to the same view. Those are these hedges.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Great. Mr. and Mrs. Billy, do you have anything to add?
I'd just like to say that my family has owned this property for 80 years, and we really love this property, and we have a real feeling of the history of Bloomington. In fact, my mother was raised a block away from this and saw this property and wanted to live here when she grew up and was fortunate enough to do that. We don't want to do anything that ruins the property. We're very historically oriented. It is just unbearable what the conditions that we're putting up with illegal fraternities next door, and the boys sit out on that landing of the fire escape. Unfortunately, the fence isn't going to resolve all that. But it got really bad when they drove a car through and knocked down our 100-year-old stone bird bath, and then knocked down part of our 100-year-old dry stone wall. And those are things that we can't easily replace. And also the trash that comes over is just phenomenal. You just can't believe. And also they walk through the property, you know, and talk right outside your window and in your backyard. So I would have done anything not to put a fence, and not, you know, I grew up in this house. Where that house is was our playground. The whole neighborhood played there, you know. And anyway, I just appreciate you considering this, and I hope you look favorably upon it, because it's kind of our last option to try to salvage some kind of living in that space.
Thank you very much. Let's do questions. Sam?
I totally appreciate what you're going through. I'm wondering if you would like to ask us at this point to be able to continue that fence along your property line all the way to the maximum extent, because I think you may end up with them also walking through the bushes. So if that's something that you would be amenable to, if you want permission now, I would say ask.
My wife might say yes. I would personally prefer to stop the fence at that point, because I believe that the bushes and the trees there are thick enough to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a possibility, can we make it as a proviso that if this does not happen
That's
in
what
the future, that we can extend it to the front?
That's exactly what I'm proposing, so yes, thank you.
All right, Sam. Renard? Daniel? Chris?
Yeah, if you could bring the 6-foot fence all the way to the bushes, would you?
You can't.
No,
You-
we could ask for a variance.
We could, yeah, that's true.
That's all. It's the purpose of that whole fence is to not impinge on the historic nature of the house, but in this case, it's really, it should be allowed, but it's,
Security concern.
I know why it's not. But it would have to be, we could recommend that
Barbed
it be,
wire and
that it be,
Guard towers and searchlights
we
and
could recommend that we support that kind of
Sharpshooters.
variance, but we can't give permission for it.
Fair.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Elizabeth?
I just wanted to ask if you had read the guidelines?
Yes.
You know about the okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
And Matthew?
No questions.
And I don't have any questions.
Did you ask?
And Marlene? Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. And Ernesto, do you have any questions?
No questions, John. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
forgot to ask I'm sure the style of the fence is in our packet, but I don't remember what it is.
Give me 1 second.
It's an overlapping paling fence.
It's a what?
Overlapping paling fence. So in other words, there's no gap in the fence at all. The
Right.
palings overlap each other.
Right. What's the treatment on the top? Is it like dog-eared, 45
It's
cuts?
pretty much the same as I've seen anywhere, where there's a slight chamfer across the top and then flat.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to comments.
I would wholeheartedly support this petition. I think this is a problem when you have nuisance renters, and I would love to see the city enact an ordinance to punish both the renters, but also hold accountable the property owners. I know that's not in our purview, it just ticks me off, and I will totally support this petition.
Thank you, Sam. Bernard?
No comment.
Daniel? Christian?
Yeah, I'd recommend a part of our motion to say that we would support extending the fence to the bushes,
Okay,
if the parties agree.
great. Thank you, Chris. And Elizabeth?
No other comments.
Matthew?
I thought we were, so first of all, thank you for your sensitivity to the historic aspect of it with this very unpleasant situation that you're living in. That is not cool. I thought we were saying we would be willing to pre-approve moving the fence along the bushes, basically to the maximum extent, not just to the bushes, right?
Yeah, well, what they're asking for is up to the bushes, and what I'm saying is, yeah, up to the bushes now, and if it becomes a problem later, you can extend it on past.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool. I have no further comments.
And I don't have any comments, so Sam? Oh, I'm sorry, Marlene?
Well, this property has been a problem for years. This is only the tip of the iceberg. And so I would totally agree with what Chris said and Sam said about, offering an option to extend the fence. And I mean, it's sad, but I know this has been an absolute horror story for a long time. So totally support it.
Thank you, Marlene. Ernesto?
Yes, I agree with the recommendation of bringing the fence up to the bushes. But is there a way that the commission can or could write a letter to the appropriate agency or board or whoever is in charge to reinforce, who's in charge of the policies for trash and all that next to residential zone lots?
There's John Zoe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, this is John Zarnes. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm not there. I'm sick today. So if I understood the question, is it whether or not the city enforces trash on property? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, hi, John. Sorry you're sick.
That's all right. Sorry I'm not there.
Well, my comment or question is there a way that the commission can just make I don't know who is the department who is in charge of the reinforcement of the how to preserve the health, right? Because this is a matter of health, I guess. I don't know. To reinforce the collection of trash, because this shouldn't happen, right? So if the owners of the rental property are not doing their duty, they need to be reminded, right? So we wouldn't be talking about this issue of building tall fences if they would be doing their job, right?
Well, I think, and I want to make sure I understood because I could hear the petitioner, but not very super well, so I apologize. But it sounds like if there's trash on the property that's visible from the right of way, which I know this property it is, then that's that could be a violation of Title VI under the Bloomington Municipal Code. And our inspectors, our neighborhood compliance staff, go out and drive through neighborhoods, sort of patrol. I don't like using that word, but they do patrol neighborhoods. And if there's trash out or certain things that would be a violation under Title VI, then those could be subject to a citation. So we would issue a warning. If I picked it up, if there's trash from the rental property onto the homeowner's property, regardless of who owns the property, they're still subject to a citation. If it's visible trash from the right of way, if their trash receptacles are not removed from the curb or the sidewalk within a day of pickup, that kind of stuff is all subject to Title VI. So what I would recommend is for the petitioner to maybe call us. Happy to give you our number to the hand department. Give us a call if you'd like to have us come check something out, or if you see a problem, we're happy to send an inspector out to look, and then the property in question could be subject to a warning. Now, I think you need to be clear about where the trash is and isn't. If it's trash blowing over to your property from theirs, like, just make sure you clarify those things and we'll come and take a look. So that sounds like what's going on, unless I didn't hear very well, and I don't want to take up too much time here.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Excuse me, can I just say one short sentence here?
Please.
It's trash that is actually thrown onto our property or blown onto our property. So there is a problem on both sides of the dividing line, the boundary line, so it's on their property and on our property.
Okay, and I couldn't hear you too well, I'm sorry, but if you could call, just give me a call, 349-3594, or send me an email. Gloria can give you that. Just to give our department a call if you want to talk about it further, and we can just run it down and see what the issue is or isn't, and whether we can do something about it. But we're happy to talk about it. So,
Thank you.
we'll make sure I'm hearing you correctly.
Thank you very
Okay?
much.
Do we have any comments from the public? All right. Any more comments from our online? All right, hearing none. Sam?
I move to approve COA 22-70 with the caveat that the petitioner be allowed to continue the fence to, at a 4-foot height to the maximum legal extent allowed.
Second.
All right.
Marlene Newman,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes?
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes?
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry you had to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will be emailing you tomorrow.
We really appreciate it, and I know my parents who, I don't know if any of you remember Morris and Alice Binkley, but my father was on the county council for 20 years, and Bloomington means a great deal to the family,
yeah.
and we really appreciate. We know it's not going to solve everything, but at least it's going to help something. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to COA 22-71. Is there a representative from?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay, Gloria.
Excellent. So, COA 22-71 for 642-600 North Madison Street. This is a reintroduction of a certificate of appropriateness that had been approved in 2020, COA 22-13 for the restoration of the building and for a vertical expansion. The certificate of appropriateness had been granted in March 2020, just as the world was shutting down, which caused delays. That combined with, and the representatives can clarify and go into more detail, but due to all of the delays caused by a global pandemic and everything that happened since, the project has been delayed, and they are here to request that the certificate be reapproved. The proposal is being reintroduced exactly as it had been in 2020. So here's more information. The proposed modifications include the addition of 2 stories on top of the existing structure, circulation spaces between the 2 existing buildings on the site, and restoration of the existing brick masonry. A new entrance off the eastern alley will allow access to all but one of the business spaces. New openings will be created in the powerhouse and on the north side of the kiln facing 11th Street. The primary floor exterior will consist of corbelled red brick matching the existing brick and mortar. The second and third floor materials will be primarily matte black standing seam and flush metal panels. The second and third floor materials will be local hardwood, ash hickory, and or oak glazing. There are no existing windows. The proposed windows will be black aluminum, wood clad with black frame storefront. And so this is the existing structure located in the Showers, at the very, very northern end of the Showers Brothers Furniture Factory Historic District. And
Actually,
no.
we were wanting to do this without adding the 2 stories above it. We were just wanting to do the lower portion of the building. So I'm not sure how that got put into the.
Well, part of it is just kind of the series of approvals that are required. The Plan Commission had 2 options, to submit it as it was previously, or to do a staff approval for a minor revision, which basically takes the building as it sits. So I guess it's more of a question for you guys. Plan Commission has already we've received 2 of the 3 approvals we need. Plan Commission made one of them. The Plan Commission approved it as a minor staff level approval because we committed to doing the building as it sits currently without doing the addition. So I guess that's a question for you is, would you rather, I submitted both of them at the same time, and then based on the feedback from the Plan Commission, we revised it to be, minor revision. So the question is, are you, acceptable? Is it acceptable to keep this on the docket as it sits, or with the notion that we're probably going to take the existing building as it sits currently, and the goal here being to get something going in this building because it's been vacant for so long. So anyway, more of a procedural question for you guys.
Okay. Are you planning to eventually add the 2 stories to it?
Perhaps. It just depends on what the, can we find tenants? Because obviously since March of 2020, there's a lot more commercial space available. A lot more people are working remotely. So, and to be honest, there has been demand for it. But our thought was, let's get our arms around the building as it sits now and get it up and going and get it functional because it's been vacant for so long. So it's not out of the question, but I think we understand we would have to go back through the Plan Commission with a more robust approval.
In the original documentation for that building, do we have a picture of it, Gloria, what they're originally planning?
yes. Let me scroll down a bit because these are the guidelines. Give me 1 second. I also included the minutes. So this is
That's the building.
the building as it is. Why is this?
I thought we have a rendering of what
Yes.
that building would look like.
Just give me 1 second and
Okay.
I scroll to it. Here we go.
There we go.
So that was the one that was approved in 2020.
Right, so would you just do the brick building only as we're seeing it here?
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
You
the
just kinda
upstairs is just not gonna be
Just
there.
lop the 2nd and 3rd story off.
Okay.
Just like that.
And the idea, that's the building as it sits now, the red brick. The historical building is the red brick part. And the same, many of the same owner occupants that were going to go into that main level, are still on board. But what spiraled, with the pandemic was the cost of adding that 2nd and 3rd stories. Because essentially what we're doing here is we're building a building on a building. That historical building, it doesn't have the structure to support, those 2 upper levels. So we would, our thought was, let's get the building as it sits saved, preserved, and functional. And then if there comes a time when it seems to make sense, the trades district, how does it do? There's a demand, what is the city looking for in the trades district at that point in time? you know, let's just see how it goes, right? And we can always come back potentially and ask for that approval. But,
Okay.
so what we're essentially seeking now is just take the building as it sits and preserve the historic building as it sits and make it commercial and functional in the trades district.
I think that we can do that, if that's agreeable to the commissioners.
I am a little concerned that we don't have, you're just saying you're gonna lop the top 2 stories off, right? So we don't know what kind of roof you're gonna do, we don't know if you're doing skylights, and then if you go to the back of the building, you know, you've got this existing building that, I just don't see enough in this proposal to understand. I'm not against you doing that. I think it would be fabulous if you did that. I just don't see what I would love to see to understand what it is you're going to do as this intermittent or possibly permanent stage, depending on how things trick out.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that we would have submitted what the roof structure was going to be. I mean, it will have to be a commercial roof.
Flat, right?
Yeah, flat commercial rubber roof. I mean, it's taking the existing structure and making it sound, yeah. I mean, we're not changing the pitch of the roof as it sits.
But if you go to that rendering that shows the back, not that one.
Well, but this is the other, there we go.
Yeah, that guy. So on that, you're basically getting rid of all the metal panel stuff.
Mhm.
Are you proposing to do these new openings on the north
Yes.
still?
Yes, that is the powerhouse, and it, you know, like the whole rest of the building has 0 windows because it was always a furnace, not intended for human habitation. So all of the windows in the red brick, you know, are necessary to convert it to commercial space. So that powerhouse is an existing structure on the site, part of the historic structure, and we would be putting those windows in.
And then you've got all these connectors between the buildings. So I'm like, I want to know what it looks like. Because we went through, I found the process we did last time. It was, sorry to just jump in here and spout off, but I found it very rewarding, and I hope you guys did too, because I think this building, I really, really hope to see this thing get built. I think it's a gorgeous thing, and it would be a great addition to the Showers District. But I'm a very visual person, and I'm having a hard time understanding how much of what you're gonna do, how that's gonna trick out, especially when you've got things at different heights, you've got connecting things, and who knows where you're making those transitions. And are you gonna have clear story at the transitions where the roof, you know, pops up? So I don't understand. You've got a box, but then you've got a bunch of other boxes that are different heights that you're connecting them all up, right?
Well, there's just one other box, the powerhouse, and right now it just has a roof over it. We're just gonna maintain all those heights and keep all that consistent, so there wouldn't be any.
This is a rendering that we submitted to the
Oh.
Plan Commission that shows the building without.
This may be what I'm like.
Yeah.
So this might be a question more for legal, because the plans with 1 story have been submitted to planning.
Can you draw them up? Can you get them?
The question would be, if we were to, if the commissioners were to approve this with the drawings from planning, if we would be able to retroactively incorporate those drawings, or whether we should table it until the next meeting and just have them submit the drawings and then process that as a new one. So this is a question for Chris, if you're up for it.
So far, we have redevelopment commission approval and plan commission.
Yeah, but we don't have those plans, so we just would need to, it's a different department. And we also have Eric, if you want to chime in and are able to, oh, wait, let me make you co-host. Sorry. Okay.
Is that the only drawing you have of that?
That was all that they required for our submission, yes. Because we had a pretty robust set the last time, before the world stopped. And, we just wanted to go through, obviously, the process again to make sure that we could gain favor before we invested heavily into it.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, I got hung up in another meeting.
So, yeah, let me text Eric to see if.
We're waiting to hear back from you about. And do you have anything else to add for us?
Well, I'm Alex Crowley. I'm Director of Economic Sustainable Development. Hi, everybody. I think context has probably been talked about. I'm sorry I'm late for the meeting. But I think the challenge to this building, as everybody understands, is that it was not designed for human habitation. It was designed to dry wood. So it's a challenge, right? We are very interested in having it renovated. We think it's going to add to the momentum of the trades district. And if this is the path forward, that we're willing from an administration perspective to support it. We do hope that the eventual design is the one that ends up being there, but for now we're comfortable.
Okay, great, thank you, Alex. Anything back from legal yet?
I'll just jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but what Sam's concerned about is bringing back the old proposal that we'd all worked out and everybody was happy with.
Yeah.
And saying that's actually not what we're going to do and what we don't and what we want you to prove. We want you to prove everything without the stuff on top. But the thing is, that doesn't, other than that one picture, that doesn't actually show us what they're going to do. And in terms of even just
Gloria?
the roof.
Yeah.
Hi, this is.
We usually
Are you
do
trying to
ask
find
people
out if
show
this
us
can
what
just
you're
be
gonna do.
tabled?
Do you see what I mean?
It's a dual question. Not dual question, tabling is one alternative. The other alternative is approving it with the drawings that were sent to planning, but which we haven't received copies of. And then just like incorporating those drawings tomorrow into like the packet or something.
I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Okay. It seems like you've just answered the question most eloquently. This was sorry.
So I could just respond. I think that the way we've gotten comfortable with this, right? Is that the plan appears to be to do this build out, right? So that the stubbing even that will be put in place in order to facilitate it will be part of the group is committed, so committed to eventually getting to this place that we sort of got comfortable with it, saying to ourselves, it's sort of like a progressive construction project, right? And the first part of it will be done, and hopefully short on its heels, the additional building will be done, that the build out of the second and third floors was always going to be a separate building, even in this design, because of the way that the ground floor is configured, so that, so we're sort of seeing it as a two-step process. This is the first step. We have an idea of what that's going to look like, and the second step is going to be that additional building that's sort of sitting on top of the first one, right? So, I don't know if you want to add anything, but our hope and objective, and I think your hope and objective, is to get to this place sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah, what I said before you came back in was, we want to get the historical building, again, preserved and operational and functional for what fits with the trades district, which is, office space, commercial space, graduation space for the mill, with the idea that, over time, how do people return to work? How much demand is there within the trades district for commercial space? you know, we would love to build it, but it has to make sense. And
Okay.
currently, you know, it's tough, you know, obviously,
Right.
materials and labor are up 35% in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
So,
we're not disputing that.
yeah, so
It's
that's
just
where
that
we
don't
just,
have diagrams and plans to work off of.
yeah, totally agree.
Go ahead,
I
Sam.
have two thoughts. One is that if you could email that picture you showed us to Gloria so that the commissioners who are online can see it too, I think that would be helpful. And Alex, just to fill you in on where this conversation was before you arrived, it's like, I think the last time around, everybody was excited about the original proposal with 3 stories. I still love that building. I really hope it gets built. My concern is that it is a 2-step process, but a lot of churches, you know, they want to build a steeple, and yet they end up with a stub for hundreds of years. So even with the best of intentions, you gotta live with that stub for some period of time, and what we don't know right now is what that stub looks like. So I do believe that the drawing that you brought today is sufficient, given, you know, the very detailed set. But that level of detail, I would be comfortable with, but I just want to see what's happening all the way around the building, just so you know how it tricks out.
Excellent.
Are we in questions, or where are we now?
We have not started
We have
questions.
not started questions
Yeah.
yet. We're still listening to the petitioner.
Yeah, I think I think it'd be helpful for all of the commissioners to see the documentation that all of us have seen, so that we can appropriately ask further questions.
I think that's a fair point, and certainly, you know, I totally hear you. Like, well, it would be unfortunate, certainly from our perspective, because we all love that sort of total design, to have it sit half-baked. Having said that, I think what I would also,
There we go.
yeah.
So the stubs are the blocks you see on the top. Those would be what would be necessary for future stairwells and elevators and such. So that's essentially what is sticking off the top there. Yeah.
But all the fenestration and the canopy and all of those elements are identical to what was in the first proposal.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Are those stubs concrete? Is that why they're necessary to put in place at this time?
Yeah, and I don't even think they'd need to be that tall. That rendering probably shows them.
Couldn't you stop them where, at the roof height, and then
Exactly, maybe.
plan to build them later? Because
Exactly, yeah.
they're not,
Right.
they're the ugly part of this drawing.
Exactly, yeah, they don't have to get them there at all, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move to questions.
Yeah, I
Sam?
think the only questions, only further questions I have, I've been hogging the questions, is those, the stairwell elevator shaft, those are in their stub form, they're just gonna be like a block? Are you going to paint them? Are you gonna?
To the inside of the building, they'd be block, and we'd probably, you know, fur it and drywall around it. The inside of them would probably stay block, but
Okay.
exterior.
Then the exterior would be, the part open to the elements would be,
Well, technically, none of it should be open to the elements. Most of it should all be exposed inside the building.
It's all interior to the existing
Yeah.
space. Within
okay,
the
so you're
existing.
talking about lowering them down below the plane of
Yeah,
the
they
roof?
wouldn't need to poke
Okay,
out through the
okay.
roof. I say we just take them up to, you know, get close to the
6
roof
inches
line.
below or whatever
Yeah,
coursing
that's
is.
all we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
They would not-
I've got no further questions.
Bernard, do you have any questions?
I just want to confirm that this COA that's in our packet is for the 3-story version. I did notice that staff did not.
Oh. Oh, that's the
Oh, that's a
old-
different one.
That was the old one.
That's the old one.
We
So
overrode Connor, I think.
I included the original,
So this recommendation is for what?
that was Connor's recommendation from 2020.
For-
And that
For
was
the
for the
3-story.
complete project. I just wanted to refresh
Right.
everybody by including the minutes from the previous meeting, along with my own recommendations in front. And the reason, the logic that I decided or recommended that everything be applied for in one go is because it is easier to continue saying, approving the same thing than to separating, complicating and changing it a lot, and especially with something with so many moving pieces that already went through so much process in the past, might make it harder or impossible for it to be completed in the end the way that you had envisioned it. So, I don't know, it was just, as staff, it was just one strategy to reach the same goal. That said, the owners and petitioners have their own preferences, and staff also, I also respect that, so.
But, forgive me, just so that I'm not confused as to what this document represents, the one that's in the packet. Is it for the single story, or is it for the complete 3-story?
Complete 3-story.
Okay.
That was the original 2
Right,
years ago.
and now they're
3-story.
coming back asking for just the ground floor.
With the intention
Right.
of going back to doing the 3 after, if that
Right,
works
so
out.
should we disregard everything to do with the 3-story for the purposes of this meeting?
That is one strategy. If I can make another recommendation, is to say, approve partially 1 story with the, like the type of thing we've done in the past, to say, well, then they can come back to approve the second part.
That's Connor's recommendation, the previous staff person's, which
Right.
we ignored.
Okay, fine.
And we approved.
That's just a historical document.
That's what I wasn't at that meeting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So sorry for the confusion. That was just a historical document for your information.
My second question is about the bureaucracy that is involved in organizing this, and it has to be done in a certain way to allow the public to be informed so that they can come and make comments and so on and so forth. When notice is given for these meetings, do the members of the public know what they're coming here to discuss?
Yes.
Right. And the fact that the packet that they would have been exposed to is incomplete,
I understand, yeah.
I have an issue with making a decision on changes made within this meeting. I think it should be resubmitted with the new designs, properly supported with documentation, and come back for us to consider it at another time.
Daniel?
I think they covered anything that, as I thought of my questions, these two covered them, so.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, just to be sure that if we approve this with those, with the boxes reduced down to not below visibility height, you're okay with that as a two-stage process?
Yeah,
And we could also approve the full project and just understand that it's a two-stage project. And that would reaffirm our previous approval, and it would acknowledge that this is a single stage. But without those boxes on top, it's about the best thing you could possibly do to a little box like that. But that's comments, we'll get to that later.
I think that was the goal of the resubmitting it the way it was, is it had previously been approved. It had been 2 years, it had timed out, and that was the goal.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
That pretty much spoke for me. Yeah, I like what I heard.
I don't have any questions.
Marlene? Questions?
Well, I have one question, and since we're seems to be mixing comments and questions. Are you applying for historic tax credits for this building?
We have not. In the past, we had not, because we were advised that also the second and third stories would probably disqualify it.
Well, I mean, but if you're doing it in stages, well, let's just put it this way. I was the /designer architect for 555 Morton Street, and we did an addition. Sorry, my dog is very barky. And it was an interesting process going through with the state architect and talking about the historic tax credit. It wasn't on top of the building, but it was within the center of the building. And it's proximal to this thing. The tax credit only had to do with the historic part of the building. So if you're doing this in a staged fashion and you don't know when you're gonna do the second and third floors, or if you're going to do them, it might be interesting to do that. I think the 5-year thing, you get, the tax credits spread out over and it helps you with your business model.
I do think that is something we were planning to follow up with the local historical tax credit experts.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the state, state, and then there's the federal.
Mm-hmm.
So, having done project, you have to keep really good records, photographic records of the brickwork and how you managed to, repointing and the repair of the brick was important. I don't know what they would think about the windows, whether that would be a character, that, the fact that there are no windows is character defining or not, but, the interesting thing about the Hirons building was that we changed the use, and they were worried about the use. And the other thing that we did was we raised the floor in the main building by about 4 feet. And what the state architect asked for was a platform in one of the stairwells where you could view the initial volume of the space as if from a spot that would allow you to see what the volume was, right? So they weren't, they weren't terribly, horrible. They weren't horrible about it. Because we did jack up the floor, which was kind of an incredible process. Because the first floor was basically unusable because it was too short. So the floor to ceiling was too short. So, it's something to look at. It was an interesting process. I'm sure that they would not like those boxes on the top, but so I don't know. It might be something interesting to pursue.
All right. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
And then my other comment is that.
Oh, we're not to comment yet, Marlene.
Not to comment.
We're still on questions.
Okay, okay.
All right. It's all right. Ernesto?
Okay.
Thanks, Marlene.
Yes, John.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, John, thank you. Just for clarification purposes. So we still have the original version, the 2-story possibility, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And now the petitioner is considering a 1-story solution with an elevator or a rooftop. Is that correct?
So no.
No.
It's originally going to be a 3-story building. They're building 2 stories on top of the original kiln.
Right.
And so right now they're coming back and asking us to do it in 2 stages. Where I'm getting it, stage 1 would be restore the brick structure and prepare it for the addition of the building above it, because the original structure could not support the building above. So that's where you're very welcome. Thank you, Ernesto. Okay. So let's move to comments. Sam?
I really hope to see this happen, and I would support this, but I feel I would be remiss if we did not ask to see what's going on the backside of this building in this stub stage. And it doesn't need to be anything more detailed than that. So I just want to see what it's going to look like and how it relates to the power building. But I think I don't have any doubt that it's going to be approvable.
Renard, comments?
Well, I'm not going to restate what Sam just said, but I agree with that. My comment is there's a process to be followed, and I don't believe that we would be doing justice to the process if we, accept this new proposition in the middle of a meeting. I believe it needs to be properly documented, the documents properly circulated in due time
So,
and then resubmitted at a later date.
for clarification then, this current petition we have now, we would decline and
Yes.
have them come back to us
With this new thing?
with the new project.
Yes.
We could just table it too.
We can table and have them come back.
Right.
Okay, just want to be clear. Daniel, any comments?
Nothing beyond what's been said.
Chris?
Yeah, interestingly, this proposal is much more in tune with preservation of the site and respect of the existing building. I think we should have no problem if they never build the steeple. You know, we were working with a desire to have a larger building, and I was part of the process too, and I remember that we were making the best of what was going to be there. But I think we should have no qualms at all with something that is going to use the same size, the same mass, the same form. It actually respects the entire Showers district better than the second stage, which we still have every right to approve. And I support even a dual approval. But I think we're over worrying about a step, especially we get rid of those boxes. We have a much better project than even perhaps the 3-story project. So I don't think we should be worried about approving something that's actually, it's more in tune with Connor's original comments about the district, that adding those stories was kind of a big ask.
Thank you, Chris. Elizabeth, any comments?
I concur with Renewal. I'd like to see everything.
Okay.
So I agree with Renewal.
All right. And Matthew?
I have a possible compromise. I think you guys have made good points, and about ideally, it's very true, you know, we would like to see the full thing. We've asked other petitioners to do that. We've tabled things when they haven't given us enough data. This is, to me, right on the line. I could see that. Because it's kind of on the line, I'm willing to consider it. I think your concern over the public process is also valid. But my concern about that is mitigated a bit by the fact that it's less than what was proposed, where it's like going to less, rather than doing something more that maybe the public wouldn't have had a chance to see. And if the public was very, very fired up about it, I imagine they would be here. So here's my potential compromise, is to approve COA 2271 if the 3 stories aren't built within 2 years. We ask that either nothing be visible above the cornice line and whatever happens to be done, or that, you know, you come back to us. So the basic idea is, like with your stub of a steeple thing, is if it's getting a long time as a stub, somehow we get another chance to look at it or something like that. That's what I'm kind of trying to find, a path through this. I think
They said they don't even need to build that up, you know, they could just build it
right,
but sitting there like a foundation.
Sure. So I'm just trying to find a way, you know, to answer all those concerns. Because it is a bit odd, you know, here's the proposals for 3 stories, but we're not actually going to do that. We're going to do this. It's a little just out of the procedure, and I think there's some legitimate concerns about, what am I approving? And you know, what happens if somebody comes back and says, you know, something happens, and somebody comes back to us and, did you approve this? You know?
I understand, it's the 3 approvals that, that kind of got us into that little conflict, but
So-
I understand it.
I'd be willing to make a motion along those lines.
May I ask one more question?
Please.
Is 2 weeks an issue for you guys?
Finish with the comments before we go back, circle around to questions again.
Oh, I'm
Please.
sorry, Marlene. Chris was just following up.
Great.
So let Chris finish up his thing, and then we'll come to you for your comments. Is that
The
okay?
answer to 2 weeks, there was not an issue if we
Okay.
wait 2 weeks.
Good enough. Marlene?
Okay, so I think that there's been so much confusion. Well, first of all, our board is a quasi-judicial board. So that means that things that we do can end up, they're court documents, basically. So the thing that is problematic to me is just listening to the confusion on the board itself about the proposal. And so I would like to suggest that we table it, or that we come back in 2 weeks and review it with the exact documents that need to be, associated with the proposal. I think 2 weeks is not a big thing to ask, but I think it can get so muddled and look like a bowl of spaghetti. And I don't like the idea of putting the board in that kind of jeopardy myself. So I sort of agree with Bernard and Sam and some of the other people that it would be nice to have a resubmission that showed what the intent was that was associated with the COA.
Are you guys just looking for
that's
basic
what I,
renderings like
We'll,
this?
we'll let Gloria get with you on that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
the only other thing I'd like to say is
Yeah,
that
Molly.
you should go and visit 555 Morton, which is just across the way, and you'll see what I was allowed to do as far as the historic preservation with respect to the tax credit, and what parts were, reviewed by the state and the federal government, and what parts were not. So it's the one with the glass block tower.
Thank you, Marlene.
I would love to know who, and maybe it's you, who I'm not quite sure if I'm listening to, who the local historical tax credit, because I know there's people that know this stuff forwards and
Oh,
backwards.
I did the proposal. It wasn't a question of that, but Duncan, there are lots of people who are.
Well, maybe in the meantime too, we can connect and have a further discussion about it. I'd love to have that discussion.
Sure.
Great, we'll pass Marlene's number to you.
Okay,
Thank you. And Ernesto, do you have any comments?
Yes, of course. I think I agree with the last comment with Marlene. This is just a model. There's so much confusion here. We don't even have the proper documentation here presented in front of the commissioners to make an educated decision here tonight. So 2 weeks goes fast. They could gather the information to present again to the commission and be certain about what decision needs to be made. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Ernesto. Okay. I don't have any additional comments. I do agree with Sam and Bernard, Chris. So we need a motion to table it.
I move to table 2271 to the next meeting, and then come back with those drawings, and should be fine. Piece of cake.
Okay. D?
Marlene Newman?
Yes, but I just have one question about what John just said. So if you table it, does it have the same number and all the same documents are attached to it, or do we just need to decline this one and have a new one?
I think that we could table this, Marlene, and then bring back the exact.
So would it be a
rewritten?
Would it be a rewritten document? Because all of this stuff together, if it has to be maintained as a file, is very confusing, and I think we all would agree to that. Or does it need to be rejected and then resubmitted as with a new number and a new?
So if we reject this, when could they come back?
If we reject it, they can come back in October?
So the next meeting with us would be October.
Well, so Gloria, I just have a question. What would the process be for providing the documentation for this thing? Would you change the number? Would you delete the stuff?
This is a very good question. So we would be treating this similar to how we have treated other projects in the past, in which massive recommendations have been made. Think of the, was it the Ferris House?
Yeah.
That we saw, that went through multiple extensive revisions of the project. And it was extended, it was tabled and extended for even, I think, beyond the 30 days. With the permission of the owners. According to the calendar, it will be 29 days for the next meeting. So it would be within the 30 days. And yes, written, like enough images. So the rendering that was sent is good. If there's an additional rendering of the back, if that could be prepared, sent in, that would be excellent. And a written description of exactly what you want. That then it would be incorporated to the packet and it would be considered as part of the ask that the HPC had of the owners. Does that make sense, Marlene?
Well, so my question is it an ongoing thing? Is
Yes.
it just a continuing?
Yes.
So is that like confusing? Like, I'm not saying that it would, but if it were to end up in court, doesn't this look awfully like garbled?
No, because
It would be, sorry, Bernard.
I was saying there would be the minutes of the meeting to support whatever documentation, and the minutes would indicate that the commissioners were not satisfied and the owners were asked to resubmit, and then a record would be made of that resubmission, and it would be recorded also that it came back to the next meeting and a vote was taken on the resubmission, which would be appropriately labeled. And I don't see where there would be any confusion.
And we've done it
Okay,
before.
so the present report would be amended, and it would be like sort of wholly rewritten because you don't want to confuse the two-story addition with the first floor restoration.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so it would be an ask for additional detail. Basically, the overall, this should be treated as a master plan. What they submitted is a master plan. And so what they're going to be submitting is additional details on phase 1 of that master plan, which is the first story.
Okay, so then when it comes back and we would approve it, we would just approve phase 1. Is that what you're saying?
That is up to the commissioners to decide if they
I know,
will.
but if it were to happen, that's what you would be voting on. If it were tabled, you would be voting on phase 1 in the next meeting.
No, 1 and 2.
1 and 2, but with the caveat that this is the first. Here are the details for what will be built first, and then what will be built later. And if again it expires, then they can come back in 2 years again and say like, oh, this is phase 2, like this is the whole project. Let's renew it again.
Okay, got it.
Great. Okay. Are we all clear?
Yep. There's a motion on the table.
Motion on the table.
Has it been seconded?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. Okay. Dee, would you please take the roll?
Marlene Newman,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Ritchie,
Yes.
Renard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Thank you,
Can I
Alex.
ask one point of clarification? The next meeting that we're talking about is the 22nd?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I heard Tuesday, I heard October, I was like,
No, that's
Yeah.
okay.
We didn't want to
If
take
it's
it, yeah.
denied,
Yeah.
you'd have to.
Well, I think this is great, and it doesn't
Yes.
sound like it has a real impact, so from a timing perspective, so
Okay.
just do a little bit more due diligence and bring it to you.
Right, thanks for your flexibility.
Is the Calhoun who owns that building? Is it the city's?
The redevelopment commission.
Ah, the redevelopment commission. All right, thank you. All right.
something's happening.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know, it's exciting.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, really
Thanks, guys.
appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Sorry again for being late.
No problem.
No worries. All right, so let's move on to COA 22-72, 1304 East 2nd Street. And the petitioner is with us. Great, thank you, Terry.
Sorry. My body decided to cough. Good timing. Anyways, I am presenting COA 22-72, in which the petitioner, Terry Cole, is requesting window replacement. The window replacement is being requested after the fact. The windows have been changed already. This should not become the norm, and it is not a supported action. The replacement windows are made of vinyl, which is not considered an acceptable material within the Elm Heights Historic District. However, the windows that were used in the replacement are generally compliant in size, shape, and configuration. Two of the windows, so this is staff observation and recommendations. Two of the windows should be replaced with more appropriate replacements. In other words, the mullions they were 6/1 and now they're 4/1 in the front of the facade, and those should be replaced with more accurate imitation recreations. So staff recommends approval of COA 22-72, caveat of changing or modifying two of the front windows from a 4/1 window pane to a 6/1. I also do have, and Sam, you usually ask about the neighborhood comments, and I do have neighborhood comments for the fence and for this. So I'm sorry to all of the commissioners for that oversight. But regarding the fence, I have a comment from Jenny Southern and from, Martha Harsani. So Jenny Southern commented, one thing the city commission will have to look out for is to treat all properties the same in their punishment and forgiveness of district rules. I am glad they have a legal department for that. I know I'm not as impartial as they need me to be, but it would give the neighborhoods and commissions a huge black eye if they lost a lawsuit with the landlords. I would say that if asked, I would have supported window replacement on 3 sides of the house, but not the front facade. Since the house is not on a corner and is set closely among other houses, you can't see the sides and back very well. There's also no alleys to consider. If the front were approved for replacement, it should have the same glass pattern with real mullions, or at least they could have put quality storm windows on the front and not replaced. Either would have satisfied the guidelines. I'll leave it up to the commission to decide what is appropriate and follow the guidelines. It is important we don't set a record of people going ahead and then doing what they please, and then plead ignorance for changes. Martha Harsani commented, I'm fine with both COAs, and in this case, the 1302 East 2nd Street is already a done deal and looks okay to me when I walked by. So give me 1 second. Let me continue reading. So I did include pages from the guidelines on windows. The windows should be, sorry, I usually just type it up, but in this case, COA should be applied for if there is removal of any window or door, restoration, replacement, or installation of new windows or doors and their character-defining features that are visible from the public right-of-way, including sashes, lintels, sills, shutters, awnings, transoms, pediments, molding, hardware, muntins, and decorative glass. So there is an emphasis in the Elm Heights Historic District for materials to be maintained, the same type of material, and to avoid the introduction of mass-produced metal windows and doors. Windows have been a big issue in the Elm Heights Historic District, so I do not say any of the, no statement is made lightly. Here's the location of the property. This is, north is facing right. It's facing, the west is on top, so this is more additional information from the owner. The owner's online and can comment and ask questions later on, but replacement windows, the existing windows were inoperable and or broken and could not be opened or closed. This represented a fire hazard and danger to anyone living in the home. Several of the windows were stuck in a partially open position, allowing cold or hot air to flow in and out of the house. 5 windows in the house had already been replaced by the previous owner. The windows that remained were single pane windows with no storm windows and very inefficient. The 5 windows that had been replaced by the previous owner were 2 bathroom windows, and as well as the 3 windows in the front bedroom, 2 of which face the front of the house. The windows I replaced are very similar, if not identical, to the windows the previous owner installed. I paid extra to ensure that the windows I installed were wrapped so that they look the same as the existing windows, both old and new. Please see attached pictures of before and after. I know it probably doesn't matter, but I was unaware that the home is in a historical district. I have owned the home since January, and it seems like I should have received some sort of letter or notice that the home is in a historic district and requires an application prior to external work being performed. I don't know how a purchaser of a home would know to do that otherwise. And so here are photos of the before, the front facade, and another of the before. So it has the windows under.
And storms.
And this is after.
Oh, I see.
This is the side before. And this is after. In the back. Sorry. I'm just going through all of them. Before and after. And here's additional information about the replacement windows, the model and make. It's all in the packets. The standard series 40. So green, save green. And I believe that's about it. And with that, I leave it to you.
Any additional information for us, Mrs. Cole? Ms. Cole?
I don't think so. I don't think there's additional information. I truly didn't know. And I was replacing the windows that were damaged. And you know, you're seeing the front of the house in this one particular picture. Those two the window on the right-hand side, it was already vinyl replacement window, and so it didn't occur to me. I just kind of matched what had been replaced in the house before.
Okay. Thank you.
And I do appreciate, I mean, I really, honestly, I do appreciate, I actually sit on an HOA in a mid-century neighborhood out in California, and, you know, I do appreciate it. I understand the whole historical aspect and the reasoning behind all of this, but I really was unaware, so I apologize.
Thank you. Sam, questions?
2 questions. One is, I guess for Gloria, because you went out and shot this. Is the back of the house actually visible from a public right-of-way?
No, not the back of the house.
Okay, so that's really not under our purview.
No.
Okay. And then the second question is just to clarify which windows that have been replaced, because the petitioner has just said that which window was already replaced before this all came up?
So all of the windows have been, Terry, you can clarify if I'm incorrect, but all of the windows have been replaced, but there were 5 of the windows that had already been replacements.
So what are we looking at here?
In the picture that you're looking at, the windows, that double window there on the right-hand side is a replacement window.
And what was the material of the windows that were replaced?
They were vinyl.
The ones that were ripped out are vinyl and replaced with vinyl?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question?
So the windows that existed in the house before you changed the windows out, what material were the windows that were removed from the house?
I left the ones that the previous owner had already replaced, which is that double window there on the right-hand side, plus some around the other side of the house that you can't see. I did not replace those. I left those and only replaced the remaining windows in the house.
So what material were the windows that you removed from the house?
They were wood.
Thank you. And the ones that the previous owner replaced, are you saying is that double window on the right-hand side of this
Yeah.
picture that's up here right now?
Yeah,
And then you replaced the rest of them?
correct.
Okay.
I will add one other comment. There is one window that has not been replaced because when the windows came in, it was the wrong size. So I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's that one at the top of the, like above those double windows.
All right, that's it for the questions. Thank you.
Renard?
Just remind me again when you bought this house.
I closed on it in January.
Did you have a broker?
I did, yeah.
Was the house appraised?
Yes.
Okay. You know,
We'll get the comments.
yeah. So those are all the questions I have. So.
Daniel?
No.
I will say, I asked Gloria the same question when she first reached out to me, and that was, whose responsibility was it to tell me this? Because I truly didn't know it. And I don't know if there's a great answer to that. I'm not sure. I still don't know if I know for sure whose responsibility it was, but.
Okay. Chris, questions?
No.
No. Elizabeth, Matthew?
For the petitioner, how did you find out you needed to come to us with this after the fact?
I got a letter from Gloria, from the Historic Council, or whatever the official title is, I'm sorry.
And
I received a letter.
How did you find out?
From a complaint.
Complaint? So my second question is for John Zodi. Are you still here, John?
He is.
Yep, I'm here.
This feels to me like more of an enforcement issue than an approval issue. Is there enforcement means for recourse for her violating the code, basically?
I need to check with legal. Chris Wheeler's on, and Chris is our interim sort of HPC attorney. So I need to check with legal sort of about the process by which we received the complaint and all of that stuff, Matt. So I need to work out and get back to you.
Okay. That's all my
How
question.
soon would you like an answer to that question?
Be nice to have it before we get to a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking at the enforcement and penalties at the moment, but nobody has issued anything yet advising that there's a violation to my knowledge. So I would have to go back and see what steps would need to be taken even to get to that point. So if you'll give me just a few minutes, I'm going to read through this and see if there were any steps that need to happen prior to that before this board could even consider such a thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Sam, you had another question?
No, I was just going to say that I think that if we approve it, there's no violation, but if we don't approve it, then it's in violation.
Yeah. Ernesto, question?
Yes, I got a couple of questions. Do you live permanently in this house?
No, my daughter does.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Marlene?
Well, I don't know whether this is a question or a comment, but there was a case a few years ago on Wiley Street where a German couple bought a house and they replaced all of, or they intended to replace all of the windows. And after that, there was really nothing wrong with windows. After that, I think that the commission worked really hard to get all of the houses that were in the historic district and were, to comply with the, you know, the rules and regulations of the board and the various, local neighborhood committees online. And also, we got sort of a comment from the realtors that they would put this on each of the listings, that these were in historic districts. So when the owner asks about whose responsibility it is, you know, I would go back and ask the question to the realtor, because they were supposed to put that on the listing. And so the question is, who's responsible? I guess it's buyer beware in the first point, but,
Marlene, I can clarify that for you a little bit, because I happened to check that out since it was an historic district. I looked up on the MLS sheet, and it was disclosed that the house is in a historic district by the listing agent. Down in the comments section. I don't know what agent you work with, but I do know the listing agent did disclose that in the documentation. So that's my comment there. So let's move on to, you're welcome. Let's move on to comments at this point. Sam?
I have a couple of comments, of course. The rear is not in our purview, so I think that all of the windows and whatever happened there should be excluded from our review. As far as the front and side facades that are visible and that were replaced by this owner, you know, the previous owner did have a legal obligation to disclose that it's in an historic district, and the I didn't know defense doesn't work with me. I appreciate it wasn't done maliciously, but you know, if you buy a house that's like in a cooperative and it has fees, you go, oh, I didn't know it has fees. You still got to pay the fees. So the guidelines are also very clear in Elm Heights, and it excludes inappropriate materials like vinyl or aluminum for replacing what, in this case, were wood windows, which is exactly what we don't want to have happen here. And I cannot support the approval of COA 22-72. I'm going to ask that the original wood windows, if they still exist, be replaced, or that windows that are of the same material be and the same configuration be installed.
All right, thank you, Sam. Bernard?
What Sam said.
Okay. Daniel?
In agreement.
I guess this is more of a clear, just to make sure on this one. So the double windows had already been replaced when she bought the house? That's
Yes.
the one?
Yeah, they're vinyl.
Okay, so when you bought the house, I'm just making sure I have this right. I just want to make, we've talked about it a lot. But the double windows were already replaced and those were vinyl when you purchased the house, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the two windows in front were not replaced, the double windows?
No.
Okay, those
Not
were
by
just.
me.
Not by her.
The
Okay.
narrow windows.
We don't know when they were.
Okay, just want to clarify, thank
That's a
you.
violation too.
Okay,
Right, I was gonna suggest that not being able to remedy the windows that were already in place, we might be willing to drop the replacement of the side windows and ask for appropriate windows on the facade, the entire facade. Because if we can't affect the most important windows on the house, then we're not reaching our goal of making this house express its historic character fully. So I just suggest that as an alternative.
thank you, Chris. Elizabeth?
So what you're then saying is that she purchased wood windows, go back, spend more money, and put in wood
On
windows?
only the front, there are only 4 windows on the front. I think the top 5th one may be original, and if it is original, she wouldn't have to replace it. The rest of them that she's replaced could stay on the house, the side windows, the back windows. But this that faces the street could have appropriate
Even the ones that the previous owner had done?
If we could give her even a choice of, she could replace the side windows, she could replace all the windows that she's done, and not that, or we could make the deal of, let's just do the facade, which is important, and you replace those older windows, the original, not original, the original vinyl windows.
Okay.
That way, I think the goal of our commission would be more realized.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Matthew?
You didn't have any more comments, Elizabeth?
No, just wanted clarification on that, thank you.
Well, I don't, at a theoretical level or at some level, I don't think we have anything to approve here. What's done is done. I think this is an enforcement issue. And that if the complaint came to us, my recommendation would be next time something like that happens, where what's done is done, is that Gloria kick it over to enforcement. And then enforcement might try to work out a deal, try to haggle a deal, or figure something out that could come to us. But I don't see anything for us to approve. It's already done. I'm not comfortable approving something after the fact when it does not strictly meet the district standards, which is, as Sam correctly pointed out, is that you can replace with different materials only when the original has been determined to be inadvisable or infeasible. I'm quoting there. So I can't approve this. A, because there's nothing to approve, and B, because it doesn't meet the standards. If we were simply trying to bring the documentation up and they had been done exactly the way it should have been, then okay, I might be comfortable with that, but not when it's not and the standards are clear. And then just my comment for the owner is I do appreciate that there was nothing malicious about this on your part, and but my understanding, and I own houses, I own a house. I have owned other houses before in historic districts and not in historic districts, and I'm just aware that when I live in a city with codes, if you're gonna do anything, you gotta talk to the city first. And so to me, the responsibility always lies with the owner, that it is not a responsibility of the city to tell you that your house is in a historic district. And if you go to our website, it's pretty clear. It tells you how to figure out if your house is in a historic district, tells you how to do all that. You don't actually even have to come in and talk. So, and then the fact that it was on the MLS listing, every time I bought a house, I read that MLS listing top to bottom, sideways, everything.
Just to make sure it doesn't change.
Correct. So that's Mike. I have no further comments. I cannot support this.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. But hang on a second, Ms. Cole. Ernesto? Comment, Ernesto?
Yes, thank you, John. I understand the point that whatever is done. Sure, I mean, it is what it is. I guess that's what we have in front of us. I'm just curious how the commission is going to set a precedent with cases like this for the future, where people are going to just install new windows without repercussions or any, or I just don't know what are the consequences. That's one thing. And the other point I just want to make is that the house is located in one of the most beautiful places in Bloomington. The moment you step out of that house, there's something special about it, right? That's probably why the house was bought, because it's a special place, it's a beautiful place, it's a beautiful street. And a simple Google search of the address on Zillow tells me that the description of the house that's the first thing it says. It's located in an historic district. So if it's telling me that it's an historic district, that sounds the alarm for me to, prior to do any work, I need to consult with somebody. And that is called the Historic Preservation Commission. So, what are we going to do after that? Are we going to let people just install vinyl windows everywhere, and they're just gonna come out, and we're gonna just be, okay, well, whatever is done is done. I just don't know what the answer is, but it could set up a precedent. I don't know what the legal response answer to this is.
I think you answered that,
I
Matthew.
don't think this is a laughing matter or something to think it's a light issue here. I just think it's a very serious issue that the commissioners need to consider. It's very upsetting, for me it is, especially as much as I care and I love this neighborhood. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. Marlene, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ernesto, and I also agree with Jenny Southern, who, pointed out the big problem here, which is what I guess Ernesto pointed out as well, is that we have, not only do we have the problem of this house and the owner not complying with the requirements of the district, but also that we are setting a precedent, and once you do that, you're kind of down a rabbit hole. So I do agree with the idea that there should be some consequences for this, and so I think what Chris said would be a consequence, and it would be a reasonable consequence that would, other than I mean, the only other thing would be fines, et cetera, but you really wouldn't get to where you wanted to go. So I would sort of think that that Chris's idea was a good one, and that what Jenny and Ernesto said really rings true with respect to the commission and allowing other. I mean, that's why this house on Wiley Street was such a lightning rod, and that's why all of these things were put in place, because those windows were perfect. They were all wood. And, a replacement guy came by and said, oh, well, there's a lead point paint, but the lead point paint was on the outside. So, I don't know. I really think that we should consider this seriously. And so I kind of don't agree with the fact that we don't have something to vote on. I think that we really need to think about this as a precedent-setting problem.
Okay. Thank you,
May I make a
Marlene.
further comment?
Yes, Chris?
Well, we're not strictly police. If we weren't, a board is to interpret to get the best result, with our human capacity. And I take it as true that she didn't know, but I also take it as true we can't set a precedent. But I also think it's a fact that we can't touch those windows that are the worst offenders unless we make an agreement that is reasonable. And I've seen people cry at this commission over the years with results of our hearing. And so I want to find something that the owner understands, realizes that was a mistake, realizes they paid a price, but that we get a proper result out of it without setting a precedent that it's just okay to replace windows. So I'm suggesting that that's a nice middle way to go.
All right. Bernard?
I find it hard to accept that the owner didn't know, because it was on the MLS, and I'm now understanding it's on the public-facing advertisement on Zillow. So willful ignorance, not doing due diligence, but the information was there to at least suggest that further investigation was warranted. Even if you didn't know what a historic district meant, it was something that you should have said, historic district, that's interesting. Let me find out more. The second comment I have is anything short of any remedy that doesn't create an end state which is in compliance to the regulations, I don't even see why it's even worth considering, because the guidelines are there to achieve a certain end, and if a remedy is suggested that doesn't achieve that end, I don't believe that it should be entertained. So.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd suggest that if we fix the other windows and that thing stays the same, that vinyl, that's the only thing you'll see when you go by the house. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm just saying, it's the only chance we have of getting rid of it, because we can't do anything about it otherwise.
I have one final, this is more like a comment.
Okay.
Or after you, Sam.
No, I was gonna make a
Make a motion.
motion and pass forward, so get it in while you still can.
Okay, excellent. So this is just one final little addendum / caveat. The city does send out a yearly mailer to the owners of every historic property in Bloomington. So there's about 1,600 mailers that are sent, over 1,600 mailers sent out each year. However, it is an imperfect system. Owners should not rely only on the mailer. It's more like a reminder. By the way, you are in a historic district. You have a property in a historic district. We do use the Elevate maps, GIS data, for owner addresses, which is an imperfect system because they are updated very frequently, but sales of buildings happen even more frequently. And so sometimes there is a lag of a few weeks or up to a month or two between that time. And that said, someone who purchases a house in February might not get a mailer till next January or something, you know. So I just wanted to put it out there that the city does send out a mailer, but it's once a year and it's a postcard, and it can get lost in the mail too. So.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Before we go to any motions, I don't think we've had public comment, and I do believe the petitioner had requested a chance to say something.
Yes. Yep. Do we have any public comments? No? All right, hearing none. Mrs. Cole, you had something else to add?
Well, I guess two things. There were vinyl windows in the house when I bought it. The front-facing, biggest windows in this house, and I understand 100% what you're all saying, but they were there when I bought the house. And yes, I had an inspection done, and yes, I had an appraisal done, and yes, I used a realtor, and I for what that's worth. And then my other question is, this is a legitimate, I don't understand question. When I look at the map of the historic district, the house next door to mine is excluded from it, and I guess I will also add one other comment, and for what it's worth, the week after I got the letter about this house, and perhaps you all approved this, but the house across the street from me put solar panels on their roof. I mean, the entire roof is now covered with solar panels. So and again, possibly completely irrelevant, but it does feel a little bit hit and miss on some of this stuff, and for what it's worth.
Okay, any additional comments?
Just so the commission knows, I've had a chance to review the enforcement and penalties section of the code, and I'm ready to have some discussion about that with this commission if it would like.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
So the enforcement provisions are pretty simple, actually. There is no precursor to a decision being made from the commission's perspective, or at least from the code's perspective, as to whether somebody is required to pay a fine for a violation, and whether there should be a remedy required. to fix what is being considered to be a violation. However, that being said, what I'm trying to say is, in most all of the sections of our code where enforcement is required, there's a step-by-step process of explaining that there's going to be a notice of violation issued to the violator, explaining what the violation is and what they need to do to remedy that violation, or pay a fine. So the violation goes out explaining what's going to happen. It would be my recommendation to this commission that the commission instruct the staff to look into this for a couple of reasons. First of all, to determine whether there is a violation, which I think everybody's going to agree that there is one, but to let the staff determine that and to issue a notice of violation. I'd like to see that procedure happen so that the person who is in violation has an opportunity to know exactly what the violation is, and then to instruct them as to what the correction ought to be. This commission can weigh in on what that correction can be, whether that's to remove the vinyl window and put whatever's supposed to go back in, some kind of a like material. I don't know what this commission generally does with regards to when it does need to repair a window that isn't readily available on the market, so to get the like kind of materials back into the building. But there are specific discussions about what those remedies can be. You can require them to stop violating. In this case, that's kind of hard to do, right? The window's already in. But you can also require a building to be removed, or you can require there to be restoration of a building. So in this situation, you could require restoration of the window that was replaced. The fines are set up in a way that are also a little bit unique. For a first violation, it can be a fine up to, but not to exceed $2,500 for that first violation. A second or subsequent violation is something, a violation of this section that happens within 3 years of the first violation. So that's when you would be able to then consider giving an additional fine. But in this case, we're only dealing with that first violation.
Chris?
So go ahead.
Can you look up on your screen? Gloria put up there the notice.
There you go. I was unaware that a violation was issued.
Yeah.
A notice of violation was issued.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already at that phase then where a notice of violation was issued, and I'm glad to see that that happened. I don't know what I'm looking at it now.
So I worked on this with Daniel Dixon. So the timing has just been, it's just been a matter of timing and following through with a lot of what the staff changed in the office. But yes, he asked that I send the letter under my name, and that the next step would be to submit to the HPC as course of action. So that's where we're at.
So this is in following with what I would have wanted to see, and I'm glad to see that this is happening. And it requested of the violator to do one of two things. First of all, to return the property back to its original condition, or to apply for a retroactive certificate of appropriateness, which that's where we are right now. And this is this a request for a retroactive certificate of appropriateness?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So if this board decides that that's not an appropriate, if the board denies that request, we're left with one remedy, which is to return the property back to its original condition. Fines can be assessed, and this board has already said that it doesn't think that that's going to get us where we need to be. I think that the board probably already recognizes that money should be spent to get the property put back into its original condition.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Okay. So I think Chris?
If there is going to be a motion that wants to remedy the front, I think we would need to give her a choice of replacing all windows that she has replaced, or doing the front and the 2 additional windows that she did not replace. So she could make that choice. That way we weren't directing her to do something that we don't have jurisdiction over, but she has a logical choice, and we have a logical way to make an end result. And those vinyl windows went in, this is just technical, but the frames are still there. The vinyl windows inside of the window frame. And we could require wooden insert windows to be put back into those 4 front windows that face the street. That just would be my recommendation for an amendment, for a proposal.
Okay. Sam?
I have a
I was
comment
just
before.
gonna make a comment, if that's all right. Did you have a comment?
I have a motion.
Chris, I hear what you're saying. I respectfully disagree because I'm disinclined to make a homeowner who bought something that was already like that replace it. I know where you're trying to get with that, but
We don't have to make her. She has a choice.
Let me get to where I was going secondly.
Sure.
We don't really have jurisdiction over the sides and the back,
No, we
have
do, we
jurisdiction
do.
over the sides.
over the sides.
They're
Anything
viewable from
visible
the
from the
front
public right away.
street, so we're giving her back those
Gotcha.
side windows
Give it- so-
in exchange for the
Gotcha.
front windows.
All right, that clarifies it. So, okay,
Okay.
fire away,
Sam?
Sam.
Before, I just
What?
want some
Yes.
clarification, please. Chris,
Yes,
the options that you suggested,
yes.
do they involve bringing all the windows that we have jurisdiction over back to their original state?
They don't. We're bartering those for doing the ones that we don't have jurisdiction over but are the most prominent.
And regardless, we cannot get them back to their original state because the original windows no longer exist.
But isn't there an option in such a case for the next best?
I will lay that out when I
Okay.
make a motion,
Okay.
if that's acceptable. And you can vote no if you want to vote no, but actually, what I'm gonna suggest is my screen's turned off.
Make a motion.
I'm getting there. I gotta, what's the number?
Oh, it's
22-72.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion to deny COA 22-72 and suggest that the petitioner come back with either option A, to replace all of the non-wood windows on the front facade with wood windows that match the original configuration of the original windows. So the muntins are in the appropriate places and blah, blah. And then they leave the side windows just as they are now. That's one option. Because as Chris said, that'll get the front facade, which is the major facade, that'll improve it from where it was. And it will likely be less expensive to do because she's already got one window that's wood that will just need repaired. Then the other option is to have her remove all of the vinyl windows that she has replaced wood windows with and replace those with wood windows, leaving, unfortunately, the double vinyl window and the front just as it is. So just calling her to account with the things that she has replaced illegally.
Can you
But
repeat
that has nothing to do with my motion, really. It's a suggestion when she comes back to us.
Okay.
Here are the two paths you could
Can
take.
you repeat the first one again? That was my question.
Okay, so the first option is to leave all of the side windows just as they are right now, and to replace every single vinyl window on the front facade with a wood window whose operation and pattern matches the original configuration of the original windows. That does mean that the attic window stays as it is and just gets repaired in place.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the window that was already replaced, we don't know what replacing it with original windows looks like because we don't have that.
We have historical photographs.
We have historical photographs.
Prior to it being replaced, you do?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he said yes.
Yeah, okay. So Sam has a motion on the table to decline this.
Second.
Dee, take our roll, please.
So,
We can
Sam,
have
Sam,
quite a
yes.
discussion.
question, does your motion include the suggestion?
No.
No.
Okay, so the motion is just to deny.
Yeah, and the suggestion is to the petitioner about her path forward.
Okay, so the
Or,
motion, okay.
which she can take or leave.
Okay, got it.
I have a question. Could she, right now, offer to go one way or the other?
I don't think we can ask her to do that because we don't know what, she's got to do research about the kinds of windows, the manufacturers, yada, yada, yada.
Details, yeah, thank you.
Timetable, time frame. I think this is more for legal than anybody. What is the timetable to resubmit a careful option for reconsideration?
Do we, is that,
I think this is.
that's a legal question. That's
Yeah, that's,
Yes,
okay, that's fine, that's fine. Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
So,
So, we have a motion, we have a second, and now Dee, will you take the roll?
Arlene Newman? Yes. So a yes says that this will be denied, right?
That's correct, Marlene.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make it clear for
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
yes.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes?
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cole.
I still have a question.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, when you all started this discussion right at the very beginning, and I realize you've already made your motion, but somebody, whoever started this conversation, said that you only had authority on the front of the house.
We only have authority on windows visible from the public right-of-way, which means you can't see the back, but you can see the sides. So anything visible from a public right-of-way.
Okay, so if I go over there and see that I can't see the one side, then now we're only talking
No.
about two sides?
The sides, both sides. And if there's an alley behind it, it could even be the back.
There is no alley, but
Both sides.
what if you can't see the side from the public right-of-way?
No,
I mean, and I don't know the answer, I'm asking, I don't.
no, the two sides on the front, I'm sure.
It's already been determined that the sides can be seen from the public right of way, so that,
It has?
I will. You know what? I am going to do a site visit. I'm gonna schedule a site visit just to confirm before any final determination is made.
all right, thank you again. All right, let's move on, please, to demolition delay, 22-14, Ryan Strasser. This is dealing with the Cottage Grove properties. I believe we asked Gloria to do more research in making that a designated neighborhood.
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay, we are back. Okay, so I visited the Monroe County History Center last week, and I really wasn't able to find much more information about this specific house. I did find the name of one of the owners, early owner, and the fact that they worked they had a working class job. That said, I went ahead and took a careful look at the took a careful look at the interim reports. This house is located in what was called the Cottage Grove Historic District within the interim report of 2004. And that space correlates closely, although not identically, but it does overlay with the walking tour by a bit. Here is a map of it. And then I wasn't sure, so the hypothesis is this area intact or not? Because if you look at the context right around the building, there has been a lot of change. However, when you look at the study area, so this historic district was not really ever a historic district. It was a study area for a proposed future historic district. The area does still contain many, if not all, of the buildings that were documented in 2004. At least in 2014, there were 77, I memorized this, 77 contributing structures, 16 notable buildings, 1 outstanding building, 7 non-contributing structures. The building in black is the structure we are talking about. I also did find that there were at least one other picture, I believe it was 2. Don't quote me on this. I have to verify again. This is the research I was able to do this week, but there was at least another house from the same era that had this type of Honick column in the front. So it's not a one-off for the structure. And yeah, so I just wanted to put it out there that this building is part of a larger context that is still existing. And in fact, the 2004 document, sorry that I'm scrolling up and down so much, but I did want to read this to you. Give me one second. So in the interim report, page 7, the vast majority of the homes in the Cottage Grove district have been converted to student rentals, and on the whole, they are well maintained. 10th Street, a high-traffic corridor that links the university to the core of town, is beginning to see more demolitions. The future of this area, which is unprotected by local ordinance, lies in the ebb and flow of the real estate market. So that was 2004. So this area was platted between 1896 and 1905, and the neighborhood has a lot of revival and craftsman-style homes. So that's what I was able to find in the little bit of time that I had to do additional research, and I worked on the map overlay. So this is a combination of 2 maps, just so that you can see what the study area was in 2004 versus what the Shard records documents.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. And just to be sure, we're getting close to deadline on this property.
Give me one second. I can actually have my COA and demolition delay records. Oh, this is not it, sorry. That's another COA demolition delay records. Okay. So the application was for July 28th, and it was extended to 120 days. So the date calculator, sorry, I'm gonna have to use the date calculator. So July 28th, add 120. The new date is Friday, November 25th.
Okay, thank you, Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have anything to add, Ryan?
Oh, let me see if I made Ryan a give me one second. There we go.
Hi, this is Ryan Strasser. I guess I don't have a lot to add because I think a lot of the discussion here is more so on the whole district as much as this property in particular. I guess, like Gloria mentioned, if you look at the map from 2007 there, I mean, everything across the street wasn't in this, stuff across the alley wasn't. It's kind of, there's just a strip that went down Cottage Grove to Dunn Street. So I guess if a district is evaluated, I guess I would question a little bit if this block would even really apply still, but I can answer any other questions you have.
All right, great. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Sam, questions?
This is a procedural question for legal, and I think this is something we talked about earlier, is if the commission believes that it would be a positive thing to recommend this to become an historic district, there's some layout of an ad hoc committee with the neighbors and such, but the way it's laid out, as far as I could discern from the materials on the commission's website, is that it's usually when the neighborhood comes to us. So the question is, does the neighborhood ever vote on becoming an historic district or even a conservation district at its inception? What part does the, if they're not the instigators, what part does the neighborhood play in starting a district?
Chris, do you have an answer for us?
You guys are gonna have to bear with me because I'm staffing this commission for the very first time. And you're hitting me with some great questions. So give me an opportunity to review and I'll be right back with you.
John, do you have any answer for that? Doesn't know what this. Okay.
I'd just add that the commission has initiated local designations before. So the fact that we can initiate it, I think, is probably
Yeah, that's not
a fact.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's not the question I have. I mean, if we initiate
How
it.
does the process proceed after that?
Yeah, and then what say does the neighborhood have in that process?
Yeah, so John Sodi asked if I knew. The thing is, I have researched some. I haven't found precedents of, I've seen precedents of the commissioners nominating individual buildings. We have done that this year already. But I haven't seen precedents of commissioners nominating entire districts, in part because there is a component, and I don't know the legal component of this, and I don't want to be misquoted or say something that's untrue just due to lack of knowledge. I have to research it more, but I need to check what Title 8 says again. So when it comes to the HPC, I look at Title 8, but I also look at the Commissioner's Manual and the rules that the Commission set up for itself in order to follow its own, have its own policies enacted. So I would just need to check a refresher for that specific question. When it's multi-building, in the past, and in my rules, my internal guidelines, it says when it's multi-building historic district, the neighborhoods need to have 3 meetings. Now I have to verify this, cross-check, reference it with Title 8 and with the Commissioner's Manual to see if this is just a tradition that has been kept up for goodwill, or if it's whether it comes from a particular law or ordinance.
So, Lori, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe there is a vote by the neighborhood or by the district about whether they become a historic district, if that's the question. I see Chris back on video here, so I'll stop there.
Is that only from elevation from a conservation district, or is that like in general?
Chris, let me defer to you because I need to check state law as well, but go ahead.
I think the Near West Side had a vote, and they voted whether, in the original thing, they voted whether to be a conservation district or a full district.
So they do get a vote before it gets.
I'm not seeing in our own ordinance just yet what steps must be taken by the property owners in order to determine if they're going to come to the commission. But in order to establish a historic district, there are 2 ways to do it. One is by this commission conduct surveys.
Chris,
we can't hear you.
Chris, your audio's on.
Hang on a second. Can you hear me now?
A bit.
Sound like you're buried in papers.
Sounds crunchy.
All right, how about that? Is there anything better there?
That's great.
Hello.
Okay. Good.
Probably is buried in papers.
Hey, does it make any difference if I'm talking like this?
You're great, Chris. We can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, what a comedy of errors. My earbuds stopped working, so I plugged in with a plug-in headset, and that seems to be messing with my audio. So there are two ways that I'm seeing here where an historic district can be created, and one, of course, is from the commission doing it on its own, but that's not what this commission's concerned with. You want to know how a neighborhood can do this, and really the only language in the ordinance at this point that I can see is just that if owners of property owning in fee simple wish to establish an historic district, then they just simply petition this commission to start that process. And then this commission would start that process following the ordinance steps to bring it.
So we can start the
necessary
process.
to have that happen.
Right, okay, so I guess it doesn't answer my question, but it does, in that we could start it and they don't get to vote on it at all, is basically what I'm hearing. So we can do it, as it were, by fiat.
I didn't think that's what he said.
I know that's not what he said, but that's the gist of it.
So
I don't hear any votes
Hey.
by the landowners about whether or not they can be, if the HPC says that we think this is a neighborhood viable for an historic district, we can put that before the common council, and then they can approve or not approve it, which may be swayed by the neighbors in one direction or another, depending on what their feeling is.
Is that right, legal, Chris?
Well, there's an awful lot in here that needs to be reviewed. And as I'm scrolling through and looking at the language, I don't immediately see anything that suggests that there's any vote that gets taken by the property owners as to this impact. That surprises me. There is a public hearing that gets held for the purpose of allowing comment on a proposed historic district. So I'm guessing that that's where the property owners can show up and vehemently protest.
Right.
It's possible that when the neighborhood proposes it, they
have
propose a vote to bring that along
So in the-
politically.
From what I know, I don't mean to interrupt anybody. From my understanding, looking at precedents, especially Matlock Heights and the Near West Side, which are two of the more recent districts, the neighbors had their internal processes and their internal meetings after a cohort of neighbors submitted or to submit the application in order to gain goodwill and be able to coordinate. And it's been the dynamic has been very different from neighborhood to neighborhood, but a lot of it has been internal neighborhood processes. Those neighborhoods that choose to be a conservation district have been given a 3-year deadline to be a conservation district by the states. And the state then automatically turns them into a historic district unless over 50% of every single owner shouts against it, writes a letter against it. And so right now we're doing a poll, which is like the vote. I have the box of democracy for the Near West Side. It's a vote, but it's simply the city facilitating the owners being able to write their own letters or say or speak their voice. But it really isn't a traditional vote in any sense of the word. It's not like electoral democracy in any way whatsoever, because the order is way higher for a place to remain a conservation district than it is for any politician to get voted anywhere. And that said, I know it seems like it's rambling, but there's a lot of like different ways that we interact with neighborhoods and communities, and sometimes they all get mashed together and it gets confusing. My internal instructions say that when a neighborhood comes to me, I as staff should facilitate at least 3 public meetings within the community, but that's more a way of I wouldn't say appeasement, but a way of negotiating with the community and getting as many people, getting a feel, a temperature for what they want. Where do they want to go? Do they want a conservation district? Do they want a historic district? How big do they want it? How small? And it's more a collaborative effort. It's not a legal guideline thing, but rather it's a internal policy of finding goodwill with the neighborhood.
Because ultimately the council votes on it.
That is correct.
I'm seeing the language now. So in that conservation phase, then the conservation district can continue past the 3-year term, thereby avoiding designation of a historic district. if a majority of property owners in the district object to the commission in writing, so that there is an actual writing component that has to be presented to this commission. So it then says that these objections must be received by the commission not earlier than 180 days or later than 60 days before the 3rd anniversary of the adoption of the conservation district.
Okay.
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Any more questions, Sam?
No, I don't have any questions. I got comments, but those will wait.
All right, we'll get to that. Bernard, any questions concerning what we're talking about now? Daniel? Chris? Elizabeth? No. I don't have any questions. So what we have at hand.
Hold on, people, Marlene and.
Oh, yeah, Marlene, thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, and Ernesto? I think Ernesto has dropped us off. Okay, thank you. So, right now what's in front of us is a demolition delay for Cottage Grove. So, I think that we have to make a decision whether to continue this on to our next meetings, or we're gonna have to release it, and then move forward with making this a conservation district.
So we'll comment about that.
Okay?
No, it's comment period then.
Yeah, I mean, I am loath to force an historic district down a neighborhood's throat. It's where they live, and it's going to be something that is going to prosper and flourish only if that neighborhood wants it. So what I think we were talking about a little bit before the meeting started, and what might be a path forward is to send out a straw poll to all of the property owners in the neighborhood saying, this is happening, this is coming down the pike. We suggest that, and send a map, say, we suggest you consider forming an historic district. These are the benefits, and these are the responsibilities and restrictions. Just lay it out there. And I don't think it has to be a formal thing, but say, we need to know this, and if we don't hear back from you, we assume that you are not interested in becoming an historic district, because you can't assume a positive if it's, but, and if there's interest, then I think we have the responsibility to pursue a district, and if not, then we let it go. But at least the entire neighborhood has been made aware that this is the direction that development will take the neighborhood if it is not turned into a district.
Thank you, Sam. Bernard, comment?
I'm of two minds. Firstly, I agree with Sam. I am also loath to force anything down anyone's throat, and would only do it if I believe that there's an overriding concern which has a benefit to the broader community, just not the people who live in that district. And if it can be shown that this part of town is of such historical significance that Bloomington as a whole has a responsibility to ensure that it maintains its historic character, then I might be persuaded to go outside of the consensus of the people. But I would, outside of that, I would certainly want to hear from the people who live there, to inform a decision that I have to make.
Thank you, Bernard. Daniel?
I keep thinking about I believe it was our first COA tonight, that couple that lived next door to that.
Illegal frat.
Yeah, the apartment complex, I don't know what the proper term, but how what they're experiencing. And I just think about some of the houses here, if some of those are sold and torn down for various reasons and there's no recourse, that some of those neighbor areas will kind of start to see buildings like that and more action like that, like what those folks unfortunately experienced between the car, people just cutting through their lawn, throwing trash. I read in the Gloria's report, they said there was a beer can in one of their gutters and that clogged everything. I mean, just some of that stuff. I just think if providing an opportunity or showing the people, hey, this could be a district, I think it's good. I'd hate to shove it down anyone's throat. I absolutely agree with what's been said by those before me, but I think providing an opportunity for the community to be aware of it, I think maybe there would be a lot of support, but if there's not, then we have our answer.
If I may be allowed to address your point, I don't think that historic designation is the method that should be used to prevent that occurrence. There are other legal remedies, I suspect, that may exist or probably should be voted in by the city council to restrict, to create a situation where that doesn't happen. I mean, but to just say, okay, we don't want that to happen, let's make a historic district here and then make another historic district there to stop that from happening. Outside of there being some historic significance, I would rather some other ordinance, be explored.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying we just create historic districts to stop that. I'm just saying
this particular
in that instance,
right.
yeah. With this one, since there is an opportunity for a possibility, that could just be explored.
Very good. Thank you, Daniel.
You're thinking zoning versus local designation, but zoning, there are some grand buildings on Washington Street that could be multiple rentals and may already be, but the form can be preserved by local designation. I think if you went into that neighborhood, you saw on the edges what happens when a neighborhood like this isn't protected. And this area is lost. That little tail is lost. This building that we're looking at now, I think, is lost. We couldn't make a good argument for it. Looks like a war zone, and it looks like a parking lot over there. Mm-hmm. And this stuff is moving in on this district. This was a study area 15 years ago. And it's changed. What occurred to me was, if we got a small committee and reviewed this study area and created a really defensible district, not a district that, all the landlords are going to say no. The landlords on those perimeters are going to all say no. But there are, like David Ferguson lives in this district, and there are people in the district that still would fight for the core of it. So I think the only defensible thing is to fall back, but have a defensible area, and then start reaching out to the people in that area. Because if we vote this district, we'll lose big time because the investors are all over it.
Well, just to add to what Chris said,
could we stay in order?
The landlords usually own multiple buildings, and they only get one vote if you are to call this to a vote. So so that's one thing. But the other thing that's kind of important is to make sure. I worked on the Matlock Heights district, and one of the things that's important is to make people understand that this isn't punitive. And a lot of people, a lot of people think that historic preservation and historic districts is a punitive thing that will limit their use of their property, and it only limits them in certain aspects, but not wholly. And usually it increases the property values. So I think if you're going to do that, you have to sort of make sure that your advertising or your PR is well done, and that you talk to everyone, because if this, Gloria might know how many of these or what the percentage is of landlord-owned properties.
I can find out.
Because that's kind of interesting, and people who have multiple properties only get one vote, so.
Right. Thanks, Marlene. Elizabeth?
This is not historic.
It's contributing.
It's contributing, and so that's why it's before us,
Yeah.
is simply because it's contributing.
Yeah, it is historic, it does have its history, it's just a more sort
But
of
it's not
humble
on the
form.
it's not protected under his
Right.
HBC.
No, we could only defend it if it was part of this
Yeah,
district.
that's what and I was
Yeah.
just wondering why we
This
have
is-
it, but it's just because it's contributing.
Because this is, literally what you're doing right now is the last line of defense for it.
So it either gets torn down or we designate it. And I think what we have been avoiding during this whole discussion is what we do about this particular house.
That's right, yeah.
No, I suggested we let it go.
John,
Yeah, John.
Wow.
I just want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to issue the semi-regular advice that, the commission needs to keep in mind about the value, the history that's attached to the building that's under question, without concern for what might be there next or where the neighborhood is trending in the future. It's about the historical value, and the commission has to keep sort of that tunnel vision on the history here, and not necessarily what might happen to the neighborhood down the road. That's a distinction that I feel like you need to offer as we do periodically. Just asking you to keep that in mind when and especially with this house. Is the house itself designation worthy, or is it not? And that's that's something we talk about from time to time. Just wanted to offer that.
Thank you.
I'd add, all local designation is a reaction to a threat to an existing form. So it's not off the charts to talk about the threat to the Hoya Historic District that exists through the development process. But we have to decide how much of this is defensible, and is it worth defending? But as a whole, a lot of this is not, some of this is not worth defending at this time.
Right.
Right.
Thanks, Chris. Matthew?
To address what John said, is there, Gloria didn't seem to find a whole lot about this house that was, if you had more time, would you be able to maybe do a little more research?
I found, yeah, I was able to find the name of a previous owner, a person who was a working class person in the early 20th century, and possibly their spouse or another family member, and what their jobs were and their names, but I really haven't been able to find more about the building.
What was their job? What were their jobs?
I would have to go to the office to find the notebook where I wrote everything down, because
I believe Gloria said that they had working class jobs in her original presentation about this house.
yes.
Right, that's true, but there's a whole breadth of.
But Marlene, we would
working
have
class
to
jobs.
take this to city council.
The problem is that things that are linked to the limestone industry have a special, weight.
Right, but we would have, sorry, Marlene, don't mean to interrupt. But at the point to save this house, we would have to take it to city council to have it designated historic. So, our question on the table, will city council approve this house being historic?
Well, yeah, that's the problem, John, is that I don't think she's done enough research or had the time to do it, or that it's been in a form that is useful.
Yeah, the only chance for this house would be to make it part of a district.
Right.
And I think we don't have the time to get that district in order
You
yet.
you definitely don't have time with it.
But I think there is a core district that might be worth creating.
I would agree.
And this is our heads up.
Yeah.
But I think we gotta pass this on myself.
I agree too. So, we have a commissioner not present with us right now. Sam's not here, but we have one, two. There's enough of us that someone could make a motion.
I haven't had a comment yet.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Matthew.
Gentlemen and everybody, women, men, all various and sundries, you guys know I love you. I love you guys. I really do. We just spent 15 minutes of this evening talking about something that is a big picture issue. It's a very important big picture issue. I agree that this is a district we need to think about. None of that is relevant to dealing with the demolition delay that is in front of us right now, other than it raises the question. I would be greatly appreciative in the future if we could have those broader discussions with all of the implications and the questions that go around them in the in the commissioner comment section of the meeting, something like that. That's what I'm saying, is that we just spent a good solid 15 minutes talking about stuff that has nothing to do with our decision that is right in front of us, other than the tangential question of, could this be a historic district, which we could ask virtually of any part of Bloomington. So my comment is, this house, the way the code is structured, you ask, is this house worth sending to the city council? In my measured and experienced position, it is not. So I would recommend that we move on, let it go, and I'd love to have these kinds of discussions about what proactive action should we take. We talk about them in these meetings all the time, and we never do it. We never do it. So how about we not waste time in the meeting and actually talk about it at a point where we could do something about it. That is my humble request.
I would like to, you know, you can't point the finger if you're living in a glass house. That's number one. And number two, Gloria has not, you know, she hasn't had an appropriate amount of time, I think, to research. I don't know what's there. The style is unique. I mean, there's one other building like it in the town with that column in the middle. I think that I didn't really appreciate your sort of fluffing off the idea that it's a working class person and there's nothing specific about it, because I think that's really not in the spirit of things.
Can I respond to that?
Well, not until I'm done, you can't. Not until I'm done.
Marlene, you have interrupted us multiple times. You have.
Excuse me? No, I've been left off the list, but I really think that part of the whole issue with these houses, these working class houses, is that the people who lived in them were important for the definition of the city of Bloomington, and they were working class people. And I think if you don't appreciate that, then all of these districts will go, because that's going to be the narrative that's going to support them.
Thank you, Marlene. Matthew.
I apologize for that last overreaction. Just to clarify, Marlene, when I said...
Can I jump in for a second, folks? Hi, Chris Wheeler, City Legal.
Hang on, Chris.
I'd just like to try and redirect the commission a bit. The request is for full demolition.
We know.
The staff is recommending that there be more time to study the possibility of a historic district. So the question about the historic district and the conversation that was held seems to be relevant, but I'd like to try and bring the commission back to its original principal question, and that is whether there should be full demolition or whether there should be more time to study.
Okay. I believe what we should do now is to move on and decide whether or not we're going to save this house, recommend it for common council, or whether we're going to allow Gloria more time, or to go ahead and move and release the delay.
Can I move that we release the delay? I believe you have to read.
Yes.
I move that we release the delay.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Did you bring me, do we have the delay?
It was not included in my packet.
Hang on a minute, we'll read the delay.
We got a paper.
Give me 1 second.
Thank
I can
you.
find it online. I'm sorry.
didn't bring one.
Yeah, the no delay resolution.
Okay.
Let me just. Okay. Here you go.
All right.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question? Gloria, do you believe that you have exhausted your research?
So this is the thing, backtracking just a little bit. During Daniel Dixon's last meeting, and Mike Rooker was present as well, they were reading Title 20, which is the planning side of things, and which talks about demolition delay specifically. And one of the reasons that demolition delay can, like an additional 30 days can be added, which was done to 120 days, was if the property was located in an area with many other historic buildings. And so the interpretation that legal had was that this additional time would be specifically to study the possibility of a multi-building historic district rather than just considering it on its own. That was the logic for, that is how an additional 30 days was approved. And that had to be through John Zodi, the director of HAND. He was the person who could approve it according to Title 20. So that's kind of how we got to where we are right now. The building on its own, the information that's provided on Shard about its age, about its style, what we can see about it, and the owners that I found in 1922, Millard E. Franchion, Boilermaker, Monon Root, and Aiken Salina, or Salina Aiken, who was a widow of John R. So those were the people who lived there at one point. I was not able to find additional information, unfortunately. So that is, I'm presenting everything I have.
And can we draw from that that if you're given more time, there probably isn't anything more of significance that you would, the indications are no, that you probably wouldn't find anything of.
The indication is, yes, sorry.
I'm just trying to say, we have a motion and a second.
I'm just asking a little leeway just to get the clarification, because if
we
we,
already
if
have
we.
it on the table, so we've got to make a decision. We have to
Okay, all right.
read
fine.
this and move forward with it at this point, because
On the individual property.
on this individual property, you know, the other part we can move forward with, but on this particular property,
Right, but one feeds into the other. If we do vote to delay the process, it would be for the sole purpose of conducting more research. And if more research is going to be fruitless, then that would inform how I vote on this motion. If there is an indication that there's more to be dug up, then I might be in favor of extending the period. So I'd like to know, do you believe that further research would uncover anything
Okay.
more?
No, yeah, I don't think there's a super short answer, and I'm so sorry. I know it's late. And I know there's a motion right now. Shortest answer for this house, no.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
There is a longer answer, and it is to look at the district, a potential district, and the house as contributing to that district. And I'll leave it at that.
all right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any more comments? We'll do the roll, then I'll read the demolition delay. D?
Marlene Newman,
No.
Daniel Slagle,
Just to make sure I have this right, so if I say yes, it means I'm in favor of
Turn it down.
releasing it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was,
Wait, say that again?
Yes means tear it down. No
Okay, thank
means
you.
don't tear it down.
So no. Well. So.
No means
You know,
designate it.
Well, wait, so Renard had a good point there, and then the answer that Gloria mentioned also played into it, is that when you lose a house that is contributing to a district, you weaken the district.
But we don't have a
Possibility.
district. We don't have a
I
district
know
yet.
that, but John, but part of the problem was to do research on whether or not this district was viable, and that was part of the proposal. Okay, so when we're voting for this thing, when you vote to tear down a house within a potential district, you weaken the potential of that district, and that's all I'm saying. And I think that's what Gloria was saying too. So I'll still vote.
All right, thank you, Marlene. Dee, finish the roll call, please.
Okay, Daniel Slagle,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Sutton,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
No.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion
carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward with the district at a later date. So, today regarding the property located at 416 East Cottage Grove, the Historic Preservation Commission declares that it got notice of proposed demolition, and after today's discussion, sees no need to review the plans any further, and waives the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The HPC may later recommend the property for historic designation to Common Council. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to DD 22-15, 301 West Country Club Drive, which is a contributing, and I believe our petitioner is with us. Thank you, sir, for being here this evening. Gloria?
Okay, so demolition delay 22-15. Located at 301 West Country Club Drive, is a 1930 California bungalow. According to the Shard survey, it has 4/1, 3/1 double hung wood windows with metal storm windows on top, glazed wood doors with metal storm, and front porch across the main elevation, gable front, metal half columns, half limestone half walls, concrete floors, and steps. The petitioner is requesting full demolition. When I went to the History Center, I looked up as much as I could about the structure as well. I couldn't find anything about the structure. The owner has severe concern regarding this life safety issues, and the owner can speak for themselves as well. But to quote, I purchased the property in 2018 after it went through a tax sale. The property had been vacant for several years prior to my purchase. The house was in bad shape at the time. I had monitored the house and kept up the land around it. About a week and a half ago, this would have been when the application was submitted to planning, it was discovered by our local homeless community. Within about a week and a half, the house has been torn apart. The front door has been removed. Most of the windows have been knocked out. The front porch stone has been removed. There was digging done under the back and southeast side of the building, and multiple foundation blocks have been knocked out. I am asking for a permit because the house has become a safety hazard. The Bloomington Police Department has been doing extra patrols, but this has not discouraged people from entering the building. I have currently contacted some people to board up the house. And here's some additional information. After the first incident where some homeless people broke in and destroyed the interior of the house and part of the porch, the police and my insurance carrier had me board up the house, which I did. We, myself and the police, have continuously been chasing people away from the location where they continue to break in. Since the filing of the demolition permit, the house was broken into again, and the back half of the house was set on fire and has burned down. Also, the front porch support posts have been ripped out. Taking all of this into consideration, the lack of information on the building, like additional information, I couldn't even find like the city book information about who lived there at some point. It doesn't appear on the Sanborn maps because it is too far away. And just any sort of additional information. And the fact that it has been, it is in severe deteriorated condition right now, staff recommends releasing demolition DD 22-15.
Okay, any additional comments, Mr. Bama?
No,
Thank
that pretty much covers it. I kept the house and watched it because there was the front door may be bags, it had a neat front door on it. I think it was used for firewood out back. But, because that house there was stuff that could have been salvaged from it if it was ever come down, but yeah, it's now, everything's
Okay.
gone.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any questions, Sam?
No question.
Bernard?
How old is that picture?
About 20 years.
What does it look like now? Do we know?
We could look it up on Google Maps, yeah.
Because this doesn't look like a house that's been.
No, so this photo, just to a staff comment, the photos that staff uses are often from the internet, from Shard or from Elevate, and they don't always reflect the current state of the building.
But this looks better than it
Than
does
what
now.
was described, yeah.
So this looks better.
I know,
Okay.
based on the description. Is that a tree growing in the front porch? Okay.
Daniel?
I have no questions.
Chris?
Just out of curiosity, did a sign go up saying this applies for demolition and that signaled that homeless could come in, or was it a signal for them to start?
I have no idea, they just found it. It was in a 4-day period when I went in there, they found it. They just, I mean.
The word gets around.
I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Don't
the
take it.
camp,
Uh-huh.
there's a big camp behind like the community forward up the walkway.
Right.
The B-line's about, this is about a 1.5 acre site, the B-line's at the left side of the house. So.
Right,
And they all got cell phones.
yeah. We put up a sign, would our sign do something like that? I'm just curious. This building is going to go to the Historic Commission for hearing.
The sign is put up, yes, planning does emit a sign, they have to pick it up and they put it, but it's after it has been applied through planning and before it comes to
Does
us.
it mention demolition? I'm just
It
curious.
does, it mentions that it is a demolition delay, that it is in that process, and it has my phone number. So people who call me directly.
The homeless might have called you, is it?
That said, the problems were before that process ever happened.
They were.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't submit the demolition until after it was trashed.
Okay, I was just curious if there was a signaling.
Then, no, I'm just saying,
Of
within 2
sorts.
weeks, yeah. It's gone.
No, they
Elizabeth,
stay
any
anywhere.
questions?
Figure it out, yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, no questions. I have no questions. Comments? Sam?
Marlene,
Oh, Marlene, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Comments?
We lost Ernesto already. We lost Ernesto. Yeah,
Ernesto's not online with us now.
okay, yeah, I'd let it go.
Okay. Bernard?
Were you allowed to make a comment? Or
Yeah,
going
we're-
around, John?
Yeah, go ahead, Marlene, if you have a comment.
So, yeah, personally, I would say, unlike the previous one, this one doesn't really have any architectural integrity left. It doesn't have the delicacy of architectural style that the other one did, and it doesn't really have any of the defining characteristics of a bungalow. So I would definitely let it go.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you very much. Daniel, comments? Chris?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
no,
Okay, let's move on.
I move to release the demolition delay on 22-15.
And I second it.
Okay, Dee, do the roll. Dee, yeah.
Marlene Newman,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Sutton,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
No.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Here you go.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Today regarding the property located at 301 West Country Club Drive, the Historic Preservation Commission declares that it got notice of proposed demolition and after today's discussion, sees no need to review the plans any further and waives the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The HPC may later recommend the property for historic designation to the Common Council. You're approved, Mr. Bamba. Thank
you very much.
for your patience this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to new business. Well, we have a commissioner's photo, but we'll take care of that later. Let's do the commissioner contributing education. If we make it very short.
Okay, so we need continuing education. And there's some of you who are veterans who have been at this. All of us need continuing education, staff included. It's part of our certified local government requirements. Many of you have been at this for years and years, and some of you are newer. And so there are a few things going on. I've been in conversation with two of you about going up to South Bend. If I can follow up with you tomorrow and figure out what the logistics for that would be. The state needs at least more than half of the commissioners to do some sort of continuing education. However, they are very flexible of what continuing education means. It could even mean going to an online seminar, and there is one in October. With that, once requirement is fulfilled, you send me the certificate that you did the online seminar with camp, and that is fulfilled. The camp conference, which two of you have gotten a scholarship to go to through the state. So the state gave us a scholarship for at least two people to go. My office can try to pay for other people if they're interested in going. There is a conference fee. It's like $200-something, typical conference. That said, John Saunders and I met yesterday. He as chair of the HPC to talk about all of the stuff we have to talk. And so we were also talking about doing the possibility of doing an internal workshop later this year for a couple of hours. I need to talk to people to figure out who to bring. I cannot give you that workshop because I myself am part of the continuing education crew. But to bring an expert from outside the community, I was thinking of consulting with Duncan Campbell. He's not here right now, and with some other people that we know within the community to see who they can bring or who they know, get references for either somebody from Ball State or from Landmarks or from the state or even BRI, and figure out some topics. So anyways, I'm going to be sending an email to figure out if there are a couple of hours in a weekend we can meet before mid-November. It has to be before mid-November because after that, like everything sort of shuts down. All our lives go to, living our lives, end of the year lives with all of the holiday stuff. So yeah, I am open to ideas about what sort of topics you're interested in, how it's been done before, what you would like to see different, how many of you would be able to meet. This type of continuing education. Last year, Liz and I went to the camp conference, and I learned so much.
Those are really good.
And I learned, for example, to BCC all of you together so that you do not interact with each other because of open door transparency laws in government. Even small details like that. And then there are other talks that are just about what to do with windows. How did a community in Florida deal with a similar situation to ours? That said, we can do our own internal thing. I am kind of up to here. Yes, I am disclosing this to all of Bloomington right now. But I do want to do the best by all of you. All of you are sacrificing so much to the community and giving so much time and effort and making such intense decisions. I want to literally do the best I can for all of you. So,
and we also talked about incorporating this as part of a retreat. So the topics that we're having discussion about tonight, we could bring up at a retreat too. So maybe a combination retreat and continuing education is what Gloria and I have talked about. So I wanted to get that in everybody's minds as something that's going to come up very soon. Okay, so.
Using the Wiley House was cool. That's a great place to do it, just suggesting.
Yeah, Good with that? We'll work on that, getting that done. Okay, now let's move on to, well, we can postpone the commissioner photo until we get done. I don't see anything in old business. Do we have any commissioner comments that we want to say right now?
Just, that's demo delay working. When we look on and think about what's the future, what we're losing, that's how it
Yes.
works.
Thank you, Marlene. Bringing the two differences up to us. Do we have any public comments?
If anybody is on Zoom online and has a comment, you can use the raise hand feature.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll call an adjournment, and if we can all gather outside to do a photograph for Gloria, and then we are done for the evening.